Our good friend Ollie London joined us. Thank you, Ollie. And Ollie, we talk about all kinds of things, but Ollie, you've just recently, you went to Israel to spend a week. Why did you decide to do that?
So I went because I was just shocked at the way social media has been playing out over the last 2 months, when you've seen, you know, pretty much silence and crickets from many influencers, you know, refusing to condemn October 7th.
And normal media, not just social media.
Yeah, of course, we know who, you know, the
Sky,
BBC and stuff. And, you know, I was horrified by that. And then also there's so much misinformation out there. You know, there's a lot of people denying what happened that day. There's a lot of people celebrating it. And the day after that attack happened, we saw protesters on the streets of London, New York, Toronto, celebrating this. And, you know, that was before Israel even responded to defend itself. So I wanted to go there on the ground. I wanted to hear the stories of family members that have been affected. I wanted to meet family members of the hostages currently still in Gaza and hear their stories so I could share that with the world. What do you think is this huge problem that there doesn't seem, under talking to Musa before, you suddenly get all the history of the whole Israel-Palestine thing thrown at you, which all goes back, I'm sorry, it's all steeped in religion, to be honest with you.
It could have been fixed, it's been kept going, hasn't it?
Why on earth can't anybody just calmly say, and you get yourself worked up, and I understand that, but why can't anybody calmly say how this could be fixed? Now, in a war, it's tragic to see kids running out of the rubble. It breaks my heart to see that. And the wars that were fought before, the Second World War, if we'd had social media, goodness only knows how that would have gone. I mean, the bombing of Dresden by us was just horrific.
Would we have lost the war without all these bombings?
No, but the bombing of London was horrific. If people can, you look at the sort of stuff coming over from the West Bank of Gaza now. London was like that.
It's all-out war. It's existential war.
I lived in a pub next to a bomb site in London. There are none now, but you know
they were there till the 80s, weren't they? I remember when I was a kid, even. But that's why that's a war close to World War II.
Well, it's a very difficult situation because, you know, there have been, they've tried to have peace talks before and peace agreements, and every time Palestine doesn't agree to these terms that are negotiated by various
Hamas
groups.
For 2 years were pretending to negotiate peace, and that's why they had all these workers going from Gaza. But actually, all the time they were planning for peace, they were planning this. So you can't even trust them to do peace because they've said that's part of their tactic. We've
heard enough of you at the moment.
This operation.
Let's have a little look at one of the videos you made, which was interesting, and maybe talk us through this a bit. If you are not watching on talkTV, if you can switch on, have a look at this. If you're listening on Talk Radio, we'll try and explain it as well. Here it is.
So guys, I'm in a safe room. This is in a family home in kibbutz and you can smell the human flesh. You can smell the human flesh where clearly the family have been burned alive in this room. When it's a panic room, it has a secure door, but it can be opened from the outside. You have obviously the door has a lever which can open the shelter room. So I know some of the stories of the families here. They were trying to keep the door shut as the terrorists were tugging on it, and eventually, after hours of struggling with that, they were unable to keep them out. And if you just look at the floor, you see broken glass everywhere, and you can smell the human flesh. It's a very distinctive smell. And look at the walls. You can see the window is completely smashed. I mean, I just want to say to all of those pro-Palestinian activists, how would you have felt if you were here on that day when 1,200 people lost their lives, when kids were killed, when children were raped, when they were burned alive? How would you feel? Put yourself in the shoes of the people that lived in kibbutz Kfar Aza and look at this scene. This is not okay. Nobody should be defending this or trying to justify this. We really need to speak up now, because this should never have been allowed to happen, and this should never be allowed to happen again. So we really, really owe it to the families that lost their lives in this horror scene. We owe it to them to speak up. And this bathroom is completely charred. The walls are completely blackened. Everything is smashed. More houses devastated by the attack.
And you know, the sad thing about this is that there are still people in this country denying that that actually happened. And the problem a lot of people have is that the propaganda put out by social media keeps people confused. And of course, it is the most horrendous thing to see children being bombed. And, you know, and I don't understand how people think they would have behaved had there been a massacre in this country.
What would we have done?
You know, I just do not understand how suddenly the propaganda swung round to the other side, the opposite way, and suddenly we're having kill the Jews from the river to the sea and all the other slogans that are being shouted. And then as soon as you ask the question, how do we solve it, there is nobody says.
They just say ceasefire,
and then they say, well, would you call the IDF terrorists? They're the national army of Israel. And in a war, any war, I mean, you look at the Second World War, the Afghan War. Unfortunately, people who can't get away from the area, and many people can't, get killed. It's the
and they're
most
not being used as human
thing.
shields. It's actually more difficult for the IDF.
Yeah, what they're doing now, though, is I suppose on both sides, because they're putting out these videos which confuse the situation even more. And I just don't see what the answer is.
Well, I met so many Israelis and met so many government officials while I was there, and they were just reeling from the worst massacre, one of the worst terrorist attacks since 9/11. Absolutely horrifying, and they were so shocked at the way the world reacted. And look, unfortunately, it's very sad, but Jewish people are unfortunately so used to this, and they shouldn't be used to having this blatant anti-Semitism, but they were so shocked at how so many people were so hateful and celebrating this massacre. There was no mourning process for these people. There was no mourning process for these kids that had their hands tied as they were shot and burned alive. There was no acknowledgement of that, and that's the real sadness
some
here.
people did actually predict that. They said there'll be a bit of sympathy, and then they'll start turning against Israel.
To talk to some normal, ordinary, everyday Palestinians who'd got in the way. Did you manage to do that? Were you able to do that?
So I did actually meet some Arab Israelis. So I went to an Arab Israeli community, and, you know, they are living in Israel, but they are, of course, Arabic and Muslim and stuff. And, you know, all of them were so horrified about what happened. And, you know, there are so many communities in Israel. I visited the Druze community, which is a very old religion. Druze, very interesting. And so I met people.
But they enjoy living in Israel. They they wouldn't want to move to. They like living in the Jewish state.
So let me ask you, Ash, and give me your considered opinion on this.
And they're in the army as well.
Ollie and I listen.
Muslims in the IDF.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I'm all ears.
What in your, and let's do this sensibly and seriously.
I am, man.
What is the solution? What, as somebody who regularly goes to Israel, I know that.
I haven't been for years, but what you have to do is get rid of the radicals and get a normal...
How do you do that?
Well,
you can't exterminate everybody in a country.
Well, they did it with the Nazis, didn't they?
They didn't. No, they did not.
They got rid. They did.
They didn't.
Germany aren't Nazis anymore.
Well, no.
Not at last look.
But if Hamas,
maybe again though, with all the immigration,
if
they could.
Hamas actually put up the white flag and say we surrender, do you think
they'd have to go, wouldn't they? Or leave? Maybe they could leave, but they couldn't live with them. Who could live with them next year?
Ollie?
Well, not a single Arab country will take the Palestinian refugees in. And, you know, what a temporary solution would be is if, you know, Egypt opened the Rafah crossing and just allowed a temporary refugee camp just for these people to have safe haven for now, and then come up with a solution, whether that's rebuilding a city somewhere in the Sinai Peninsula.
UN run maybe there.
Exactly. But, you know, the problem is, even if you get rid of Hamas, you still have the ideology there. And the sad thing is kids are taught in schools to hate. They are taught how to use
with
assault
Nazism,
weapons.
They managed to get rid of that as well. Sort of.
It's a very long process. So once you get rid of Hamas, you then have to get rid of that
it's from 3 years old up,
ideology.
basically. So everyone who's...
But, you know, if you want a real solution, you have to look at who is funding Hamas. So you have Iran.
Can you stop your phone?
Well, if you want to get rid of Hamas and future terrorist attack, you have to cut off the funding source, which is Qatar and Iran. Iran
and
is
us
backing
as well.
them, and Hezbollah.
With the aid that we
the
give.
aid we've seen.
They're billionaires. The leaders. They're £3 billion. One leader's worth.
We've seen Hamas hijacking a lot of these humanitarian aid trucks.
Yeah.
On the side.
I mean, what I don't understand is, I mean, the United Nations have shown themselves up to be completely useless. I don't think Israel would let them into this situation now, but maybe
An Arab-led peace force would be good. They never really do that. But why don't the Saudis and maybe it's someone from that world they might be more accepting of?
I mean, they're all saying, you know, we support our Muslim brothers in Palestine, but not a single one of them is taking action to help these people. You know, Jordan has a very large Palestinian population. Why not take them in, you know, until there's
Well, they have refugee camps in Jordan as well.
Absolutely, they do. You know, why aren't these other countries, Saudi Arabia, that has, you know, trillions of dollars in annual GDP, why are they not saying, let's have a temporary refugee camp, let's build them facilities, let's keep these people here until this problem is fixed?
But the Saudis, on one hand, are doing peace with Israel, but on the other hand, they've got to pretend they're a bit friendly on the other.
Is exactly the thing I'm talking. We're talking about this, and I cannot understand why suddenly the way things have changed. Nobody wants to see innocent people killed. It's heartbreaking, as I said
It's horrible
before.
seeing kids.
But then, why do we get texts like this from somebody saying, "Ollie London, shameless war tourist"? Who is this dick? Excuse the language.
He names him and then says he doesn't know who he is.
Other people's misery, shameful war tourist. But you see, you are too stupid to put your name or to call in and take part in this debate. If somebody can give me some way that we could find peace between Palestine and Israel, I would be talking about it non-stop. And to call Ollie a war tourist, I mean, really, what good do you think that does? How do you think that actually helps the situation?
I went to see the families. I went to see the victims of this attack. So, you know, that is to try and draw attention and share these people's stories after what they went through. You know, there was a story of...
It's had a lot of views, your stuff, as well.
Yeah, there's a story of a family in this village who actually went to their home, Kafar Azza, and the father was found clutching his two children in his arms with the mother, and they'd been shot to death after their house had been burned down and in their safe room. And there were 62 people in that village that were killed, children found with their hands tied as they were shot.
Did you meet politicians out there?
I did. I was with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs with my trip, so I met a lot of ambassadors and ministers, and you know, just I met so many people. I met Arab Israelis, I met people living on the border, people living in the north.
I tell you what we're going to do. You want to stay with us? I'd like to take calls.
Absolutely.
I mean, here's another one. Says Dan from Kent. He's one of our regulars. If you want to text us, 87222. Start the text with the word talk. It'll come through to us. And Dan from Kent says, if it wasn't for Hitler's persecution of the Jews and the German citizens shown of the horrors, we would have had repercussions of the bombing of Dresden.
No, so people got this. We didn't go to war to protect the Jews. Britain went to war to protect itself. There's a bit of you got to go back to the history books.
Yeah, you are never going to get an answer when you
catalyst.
Constantly talk over each other. Well, we
never talk over.
We never
talk over each other.
But you
we
know,
never do
that's
that.
a pretty
We don't
stupid
talk over
thing
each
to
other.
say.
No, we never do that.
James and Ash, you're both thick. Lots of love from Sean the
Keep
Sheep.
listening.
Yes.
It's educational.